My name is Dr. Cassandra Reeves. I'm 34 years old. 5 years ago, my younger sister told one lie so perfectly timed that it erased me from my entire family in under a week. She told them I had dropped out of nursing school, that I was hiding a secret life, that I had thrown away every sacrifice our parents ever made. And my parents, people who had worked double shifts and skipped vacations so I could chase something bigger, believed every single word. My mother stopped returning my calls. My father's number showed call failed for 18 months straight. They missed my graduation, my board certification, my wedding. For 5 years, I lived as though I had simply ceased to exist to the two people who brought me into this world. Then one evening in late October, a trauma team burst through the bay doors of Mercy Ridge Medical Center in Nashville. Severe internal injuries, critical blood loss. The charge nurse paged the attending trauma surgeon, me. And when my mother looked up from the waiting room and saw the name embroidered on my white coat, Dr. C. Reeves, trauma surgery, she grabbed my father's arm so hard he later showed me the bruise. That was the moment 5 years of silence finally shattered. To understand why that moment mattered, you have to go back to the summer of 2018. Knoxville, Tennessee. Our back porch. A letter on the kitchen counter I was too nervous to open alone. Growing up in the Reeves household, there were two daughters, my sister Desiree and me. Everyone loved Desiree. She was magnetic, bright-eyed, quick-witted, the kind of person who made every room feel like a party she had personally organized. My parents orbited her like she was a small sun. My father drove a delivery truck for 22 years. My mother worked a clinic front desk and picked up laundromat shifts when things got tight. They were proud people. Appearance meant everything, and Desiree always looked exactly right. I was the quiet one. The one reading thick library books at family cookouts. Not difficult. Not troubled. Just easy to overlook. There is a specific loneliness that comes from living in a house full of people who have never learned to see you. In 10th grade, I was selected for a summer research fellowship at Vanderbilt's biology department. The Saturday of the ceremony, Desiree had a dance recital. My parents went to the recital. I took the city bus to Vanderbilt alone, received my certificate, came home, and set it on the counter where it sat for 11 days before someone moved it. I told myself it didn't matter. I focused on grades instead. And one afternoon in July 2018, my patience was rewarded. The acceptance letter from Vanderbilt's accelerated BSN to DNP program arrived in a plain envelope. Dad opened it without knowing what it was. He read it once, then again, then walked out to the back porch where I was sitting. Vanderbilt, he said slowly. Then, you might actually make something of yourself, Cassandra. It was barely a compliment. But from my father, it felt like a standing ovation. Mom called every relative she knew. Cassandra got into Vanderbilt's doctoral nursing program. I had never heard pride in her voice when she talked about me before. That night at dinner, I glanced at Desiree. She smiled, but her eyes were doing a different calculation entirely. I noticed it. I told myself it meant nothing. I was wrong. After I moved to Nashville, Desiree called constantly. She asked about my professors, my rotations, my fears. She remembered details from weeks earlier and brought them back up casually like she was taking notes. I thought she finally cared about me. I was not her sister. I was her intelligence source. The leave of absence became relevant in my 3rd year, when my closest friend Tanya Okafor, a woman who had grown up in foster care with no family behind her, was diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer. Tanya had talked me off the ledge first year when I nearly quit. When she got sick and had nobody, I filed a formal 1-semester medical leave of absence, moved into her apartment, and drove her to every chemotherapy appointment. One exhausted night, I made the mistake of calling Desiree. I told her everything, the diagnosis, the leave, the plan to return in January. She said all the right things. Don't worry, I won't say anything to Mom and Dad. You know how they get. 3 days later, my world collapsed. Dad called at 10:47 at night. I was sitting beside Tanya's hospital bed. Desiree told us everything, he said. The dropping out, the lying, the man you've been hiding. I stood up so fast my chair scraped the floor. None of that is true. I have documentation. I can give you my program director's number right now. She said you'd say that. My mother got on the line crying. How could I do this to them? After everything they gave up. Please call the school. Ask them. I'll forward you the paperwork tonight. My father's voice hardened. Do not call this house again until you're ready to tell the truth. Then he hung up. 4 minutes and 11 seconds. That's how long it took my family to erase me. 20 minutes later, a text from Desiree. I had to tell them, Cass. I was worried about you. I'm sorry. She added a small purple heart. I stared at that purple heart until the wall across from me blurred. Then Tanya's monitor beeped, and I went back inside. Because she needed me, and nobody else was coming. I called 17 times over the next 10 days. Every call failed. I emailed scanned copies of my leave paperwork with my program director's phone number in the signature. I mailed a letter with return receipt requested. It came back unopened, my mother's handwriting on the return label, which meant she had held it in her hands and made a conscious decision to send it back. I tried. God, I tried. Then I understood something painful and clarifying. This was not entirely about Desiree's lie. My parents had always been prepared to believe the worst of me. Desiree simply handed them permission. Tanya died in February. 6 people came to her funeral. Afterward, alone packing up her apartment, I found a sticky note tucked inside her anatomy textbook. Her handwriting, a little shaky at the end. Finish it, Cass. You were always going to be great. Love, T. I sat on her floor and cried for a long time. Then I stood up, washed my face, and called my program director to confirm my re-enrollment date. I went back to Vanderbilt with no family support, $32,000 in new loans, and weekend clinic shifts to cover rent. I became the kind of person who could compartmentalize anything and then stayed up until midnight grieving it afterward. I graduated on time. Nobody from Knoxville came. I matched into a trauma fellowship at Mercy Ridge Medical Center. I met my mentor, Dr. Paulina Chaby, a cardiothoracic surgeon with 0 patience for self-pity, who found me crying in a supply room one night and said, "You're going to lose patients. You're going to grieve them. Then you're going to get up tomorrow and save the next one. You're built for it." I never forgot that. I met my husband, Marcus, during fellowship, a public defender, with the patience to listen to complicated truths without rushing to fix them. When I told him the full story of my family, he didn't flinch. He said, "You didn't deserve any of that. Not one piece of it." I had to excuse myself to the bathroom, because I was not prepared to cry on a 4th date. We got married in Pauline's backyard 2 years later. Marcus's mother walked me down the aisle. I mailed my parents an invitation. It came back sealed. 5 years passed. I became chief of trauma surgery, the youngest in the hospital's history. I built a home, a marriage, a life entirely my own. But some wounds leave permanent impressions. Every holiday, I noticed the phone that didn't ring. The night everything changed, my pager went off at 11:22. Level 1 trauma. Female. Early 30s. Highway collision. Critical blood loss. I drove through cold rain running through surgical protocols. I scrubbed in, walked to the bay, and reached for the intake tablet. Patient name: Desiree Reeves. 3 full seconds of stillness. Then training took over like a switch being thrown in a dark room. She looked terrible, wrong color, dropping pressure, compromised breathing. Behind the stretcher, my parents ran to keep pace. Older. Frightened. My mother's hair almost entirely gray now. My father gripping the doorframe, demanding to know where the surgeon was. A nurse pointed toward me. My father looked at my badge, then at my face. I gave one small, level shake of my head. Not now. They were guided to the waiting area while I walked into the OR. I want to be honest. Alone in the scrub room, I had exactly one moment where I thought about reassigning the case. Then I thought about Tanya's sticky note, about what it cost to become the person standing in that room. And I thought, patients do not deserve our personal histories. They deserve our best work. I scrubbed in. I walked through those doors. For the next 4 hours and 17 minutes, she was not my sister. She was my patient. Ruptured spleen, lacerated liver, fractured ribs with secondary damage. At 3:44 inches the morning, her pressure stabilized. My resident looked at me. "You want me to talk to the family?" I pulled off my gloves. "No. This one's mine." I walked into the waiting area in surgical scrubs, badge visible, fully and unmistakably myself. My father stood. "How is she?" "Your daughter survived surgery. She's stable. She'll be in the ICU several days, but she's alive." "Not Dad. Not Mom." I said your daughter and watched them both absorb that. My mother stepped toward me. I took half a step back. Quiet. Clear. "Cassandra, you're a doctor." "I'm the chief of trauma surgery." My father stared at my badge. But Desiree said, "What exactly did Desiree say?" His mouth opened. Nothing came out, because there was no version of an answer that didn't indict his daughter and himself simultaneously. "She told us you dropped out," my mother whispered. "I filed a formal leave of absence to care for a dying friend. I sent documentation. I called 17 times. I mailed you a letter." I looked at her steadily. "You sent it back." A passing nurse said, "Dr. Reeves, the State Trauma Excellence Committee confirmed your nomination came through. Congratulations." She kept walking. My mother looked up. "Awards?" I turned to leave. Behind me, I heard my mother say softly, "Gerald, what have we done?" Desiree woke the next afternoon. When she read my badge, Dread moved across her face in slow stages. "You're my surgeon," she said. "Yes." I watched the familiar calculation begin behind her eyes, the searching for the right angle. I recognized it the way you recognize a song you've heard too many times. "I can explain everything. You need to explain it to them." I nodded toward the hallway. "They're right outside." Then I walked out and let the truth do what truth does when you stop running interference for it. Aunt Greta arrived that afternoon carrying a folder. Screenshots of my emails with timestamps, my graduation photo, the returned letter with my mother's handwriting on it, and a text from Desiree to Greta that read, "Please don't mention Cassandra's residency to Mom and Dad. They've finally found some peace." My mother read that text 3 times. Then she put her face in her hands. My father stood at the window with his back to the room. Greta told me it was the first time in 40 years she'd seen him cry. 2 weeks later, I sat across from Desiree at a coffee shop. Neutral ground. She looked smaller than I remembered, the particular smallness of a person who has had their story taken from them. "Why?" I asked. She turned her cup in her hands. Then, "Because you were becoming everything I wasn't. And I didn't know who I was, if I wasn't the one everyone was watching. That's the first honest thing you've said to me in years." Then she admitted something worse. She had contacted Vanderbilt anonymously, tried to have my leave of absence revoked, tried to end my career before it started. The program director hadn't believed the complaint because my documentation protected me. "The truth kept me safe," I told her. "It saved me even when I didn't know it was saving me." My conditions. She would write a full account of every lie, every rumor, every person she had influenced, and she would send it in writing to every one of them. She agreed. I met my parents separately and told them that rebuilding required honesty and a therapist. Real work. My father resisted immediately. "We don't do things like that in this family." "I know," I said. "That's a large part of how we ended up here." My mother put her hand on his arm. He nodded slowly, like a man surrendering something that had cost him more than he expected. Desiree sent the email. 43 relatives received her written account. Nobody destroyed her. The trust she had spent a lifetime accumulating simply drained away quietly as people stopped extending the automatic belief they had always given her. For Desiree, who had built her identity around being the one everyone believed, that was consequence enough. In March, I received the Tennessee Trauma Excellence Award at a dinner in Nashville. 260 people in a ballroom. Near the back, at a table Greta had arranged, sat my parents. I kept my remarks simple, because the most important things usually are. 5 years ago, I thought losing my family's belief in me would break me. Instead, it forced me to discover exactly how unbreakable I actually was. The people who chose to stay became my family, and the people who found their way back imperfectly, years late, taught me that it is possible to rebuild something real from the ruins of something dishonest. It is slow work. It is not guaranteed, but it is possible. My father stood during the applause. He was the only one in the room who stood because he was the only one for whom standing cost something. After the dinner, he found Marcus near the coat check. "I should have been the one to walk her down the aisle," he said. Marcus looked at him steadily. "Yes, sir. You should have." My father's eyes filled. He extended his hand. Marcus shook it. "My parents come to our house some Sunday mornings now. Careful. Gentle. Like everyone is learning a new language." One snowy January morning, my father stood in our kitchen doorway, hands in his jacket pockets, unsure of himself in a room that wasn't his. Then he asked, "Can I help with anything?" I had to turn toward the stove for a moment. I handed him the plates. "You can set the table." He counted carefully. 1, 2, 3. Then a pause. 4? He said it like a question he wasn't quite asking out loud because the 4th plate was about more than breakfast. 4, I said. He set the last plate down gently. The way you set something down when you know it matters. My mother hugged me by the stove. Not dramatic. Not a movie moment. Just a quiet, sustained holding on. The kind that is really an apology still being given, and a forgiveness still being extended, in the only language that finally felt adequate. Outside, snow fell softly. Marcus poured coffee. The kitchen smelled like something warm. For the first time in 5 years, my family sat together at a table in my house. Not healed, not perfect, not finished, but real, present, trying. That is enough. Some mornings, that is everything. I did not get revenge on my sister. I never needed it. I became someone so grounded in her own truth that revenge had nothing to add, and watching me become that person hurt Desiree far more than any retaliation ever could have. The truth does not always arrive on time. Sometimes it arrives at 3:44 inches the morning in a trauma bay, wearing a name badge, with steady hands and nothing left to prove. But it arrives. My name is Dr. Cassandra Reeves. I am 34 years old. And after a very long time of belonging nowhere, I am finally learning one Sunday morning, one conversation, one carefully set plate at a time, how to let myself belong somewhere again. 4 plates. It's a start. If this story stayed with you, leave a comment. I'd love to know what you would have done in Cassandra's place. And if someone in your life needed to hear this today, share it with them.